So, you want to know about the mystery woman who claimed to be a Sodder child? That's a really good question, because the Sodder case, it's full of so many twists and turns. It's one of those stories that just stays with you, but here's the thing. When people talk about someone claiming to be a lost Sodder child, the most famous story, the one that really got everyone talking, wasn't actually about a woman. It was about a man. A photo of a man. But the idea, the thought of one of those kids showing up years later, a grown-up, that's what the imposter theory really digs into. It's about someone, anyone, coming out of the shadows and saying, hey, I'm one of them. Let's back up a little first. To really get it, we have to go back to the beginning. To Christmas Eve, 1945. This was in a small town called Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family lived there. George and Jennie Sodder, they had 10 kids. A big family, a loud family probably, a busy family. George, he was an immigrant from Italy. He worked hard. Jennie, she was from the area. They built a good life for themselves. That night, most of the kids were home. Some of the older ones were out, but the younger ones, they were all tucked in. Maurice, he was 14, Martha was 12, Louis 9, Jennie 8, Betty 5, and little George Jr., he was just 2. The story goes that the fire started just after midnight, maybe around 1 a.m. on Christmas Day. Jennie Sodder, she heard something, a thud maybe. Then she smelled smoke. She woke up George. They ran out of their bedroom, like the house was on fire. Not just a little fire, but a big one already taking hold. They got some of the kids out, 4 of them. John, the oldest boy who was home, ran back in to try and get more. But the fire was too much. George tried everything. He ran to get a ladder, but it wasn't in its usual spot. He tried to get his trucks to pull a window out, but they wouldn't start. Nothing worked. It was like everything was fighting against them. The house burned to the ground fast. By the time the fire department finally got there, it was too late. The truck, it had problems. It took them a while to even get it started, then more time to drive to the house outside of town. By then, nothing was left but ashes, just smoking ruins. And that's when the 5 children were gone. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, Betty. They weren't found in the rubble, not a single bone. Not a trace, nothing. The fire chief, a guy named F.J. Morris, he told George and Jennie that the fire must have been so hot it burned their bodies completely. Just vaporized them. But George and Jennie, they couldn't believe it. How could a body, bones and all, just disappear? They'd heard of people dying in fires, but there was always something left. Always. And other things didn't add up, like the ladder being gone, the trucks not starting, and Jennie. She says she heard a thud on the roof right before the fire, and then later she saw a man in a car watching the fire. He was laughing, she said. It was all very strange. The official report, it said the fire was caused by faulty wiring. But George, he was an electrician. He said the wiring was fine. He had checked it recently. And he also had Christmas lights up, but he said he checked those too. He was careful. The coroner held an inquest. A jury decided the fire was accidental. The children were declared dead. Their death certificates were issued, but the Sodders, they just knew it wasn't true. And deep down, they felt it. Their children were alive, somewhere. So the family didn't just move on. Not ever. They never stopped. George and Jennie, they moved out of that burnt-out spot. They built a fence around it. They turned it into a memorial garden for their missing children. But it wasn't a graveyard. It was a place of memory, a place of waiting. They spent the rest of their lives searching. They put up billboards, big ones, with pictures of their kids, asking for information. They offered rewards. They followed every lead, every rumor, every tip that came in. And believe me, there were a lot of them. This was a famous case, even then. People talked. People still talk. They went on radio shows. They tried to get the FBI involved. For a while, the FBI did look into it, but they said it was a local case. They couldn't find anything to suggest it was a kidnapping or federal crime. So they dropped it. But the Sodders didn't drop it. Never. They even visited psychics. Anything to find a clue. They really believed someone took their children. Maybe it was some kind of retaliation against George because he was outspoken and he had opinions that not everyone liked. He was tough, George was. He spoke his mind. Maybe someone wanted to hurt him. And this is where the imposter theory comes in and the question about the mystery woman. Because with a case like this, with so much uncertainty, with no bodies, people start to wonder and people start to claim things. So who was this mystery woman who said she was a Sodder child? Well, as I said, the most famous claim, the one that really lit up the Sodder family's world, again, wasn't from a woman. It came years later, in 1967, and it was a picture of a man. But let's think about the idea of a mystery woman. Why would someone think that? Maybe because the thought of a little girl like Betty or Jenny surviving and growing up in secret and then coming forward as an adult is a powerful image. It's the kind of thing that fuels movies and books, the Lost Child found. It's full of hope and heartache. And who knows, maybe there were women who came forward over the years. This case, it's got layers of reports, rumors, hushed conversations. The Sodders had 10 kids, 5 went missing, 5 were accounted for. Imagine the agony of the kids who did survive living with that open wound. And imagine the hope that would spring up every time anyone, made a claim. But the big one, the one that actually showed up at Jennie Sodder's door in a letter in 1967, was a photo. And it was of a man in his late 20s or early 30s. The letter was sent to Jenny. It was postmarked from Central City, Kentucky. The photo was a black and white snapshot. On the back, someone had written, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, 89132 or 35. Louis was one of the missing boys. He would have been 9 when he disappeared. In 1967, he would have been 31. The man in the photo looked about that age. When Jenny got that photo, you can only imagine what went through her mind. All those years, all that searching, all that pain, and then this, a face, a grown-up face, but she instantly thought she saw Louis in him. She said she recognized his eyes, his nose, his hair was dark, just like Louis's. George, he felt it too. They both looked at that photo and thought, this is it. This is our Louis. It reignited everything. All the hope, all the certainty they had that their children were still out there, alive. This was proof, they thought. They didn't just sit on it, they couldn't. They immediately hired a private detective. They had to. This was too big, too important. They sent the detective to Kentucky, to Central City, to find this man, to find Louis. The detective, he investigated, and he came back. He reported his findings to George and Jenny. But here's where it gets really murky, really truly mysterious. The detective told them what he found, and George and Jenny, after hearing his report, they actually believed it was Louis. They were convinced. But then they, for reasons that are still debated and not fully understood, didn't publicly reveal the findings. They didn't bring Louis home. They didn't tell the press. They kept it quiet. Why? Why would two parents who had spent decades searching for their son finally get a solid lead, a confirmation even, and then not bring him home? There are theories, of course, lots of them. Some people think the detective found Louis, but Louis didn't want to be found. Maybe he had a new life, a new family, and didn't want to disrupt it. Maybe he was told a different story about his past. Maybe he had no memory of the fire or of the Sodder family. That's a sad thought, but it's possible. Another theory is that the detective found Louis, and Louis did want to come home, but he was in some kind of danger. Maybe the people who took him in the first place were still around, still powerful, still a threat. And George and Jenny, being fiercely protective, decided it was safer for Louis to stay hidden, to live his life without the danger that finding him would bring. This theory makes sense if you think about George's strong belief that the children were taken as an act of revenge or by the mafia, a common theory circulating in West Virginia at the time because of George's background and outspoken nature. And then there's the possibility that the detective's report wasn't as conclusive as the Sodders believed. Maybe he found the man, but the man denied being Louis. Or maybe the detective himself couldn't be trusted. We don't know the exact details of that report. It was kept private between the family and the detective. The Sodder family never shared the specific details of what the detective found or said. And that secrecy just adds another layer to the mystery. But the photo of the man claiming to be Louis, it stayed with the Sodder family. They hung it on their mantelpiece right next to the billboard pictures of the missing children. It was a constant reminder, a constant question, a constant ache. So while there wasn't a widely known mystery woman who claimed to be a Sodder child, this case of the man in the photo, it's the heart of the imposter theory. It's the idea that one of the children survived, grew up, and then made contact, or that someone pretended to be one of them. Why would someone pretend? That's another big question. In cases of missing persons, especially famous ones, you get all kinds of claims. People seeking attention, people who genuinely believe they are the missing person, even if they're not. People who are mentally unwell, or yes, sometimes, people looking for money, or to cause trouble. For the Sodders, any claim, real or fake, was devastating. It would bring a rush of hope, a surge of adrenaline, and then often another crushing disappointment. The emotional toll of decades of this must have been immense. Imagine getting your hopes up, only to have them dashed again and again. But they never gave up. That's the amazing thing about George and Jennie Sodder. Their resilience, their love for their children. It was endless. The specific phrase, little boys on the back of the photo. It adds to the enigma. What did it mean? Was it a coded message? A misspelling? A little boy, a lie boy? Nobody knows for sure. And the number 890132 or 35. Was that a social security number? A military ID? Something else entirely? Another dead end in a case full of them. Even after George Sodder passed away in 1968 and Jennie in 1989, the remaining Sodder children who survived the fire, they kept searching. They kept the billboards up, they kept the memory alive, they kept hoping, and they kept that photo of Louis on display. They couldn't let it go. How could they? The imposter theory itself speaks to the deep human need for resolution. When a story doesn't have an ending, our minds try to create one. And the idea that the children didn't die, that they were spirited away and grew up in secret, is a more comforting thought than them just burning to ash. It keeps the possibility of a happy reunion alive, even if it's a complicated one. The Sodder case, it continues to fascinate people because it touches on so many things. Family, love, tragedy, injustice, official incompetence, conspiracy, and the enduring mystery of the unknown. It's a puzzle with so many pieces missing, and every now and then, someone thinks they found a piece, like that photo. Even today, people still talk about the Sodder children. There are documentaries, podcasts, online forums. Everyone has a theory. Was it the mafia? Was it a revenge plot? Was it just a terrible fire and the chief was right, the bodies were completely incinerated? Or were they taken by someone hidden and raised under new identities? And if they were raised under new identities, could one of them, a male or female, eventually figure out their true past? That's the real core of the imposter theory. Not necessarily someone pretending for malicious reasons, but someone genuinely discovering they might be a Sodder child. Or someone being told a story, or just having a hunch. What happened to the man in the photo? Did anyone ever track him down beyond what the private detective did? The public never heard. The Sodder family stayed quiet about it, and because they did, the mystery just grew bigger. It became another unanswered question in a case already overflowing with them. So, when you ask about the mystery woman who claimed to be a Sodder child, it highlights the kind of strange, hopeful, and sometimes heartbreaking claims that emerge from cases like this. It's the human element. The desire for a miracle, for a secret to finally come out. The Sodder family's story, it's a powerful one about never giving up, about believing in your gut, and about the torment of not knowing. The imposter theory, whether it's about a man or a woman, it's just one chapter in that long, sad, and incredibly captivating book. It keeps the possibility alive. It keeps us all wondering. And that's why, after all these years, people are still talking about the Sodder children of Fayetteville, West Virginia. And they're still asking questions, just like you are.